Known as the Hairy Lady by contemporaries, this is the largely forgotten yet incredible story of the life of Barbara van Beck, a woman with werewolf syndrome who successfully monetized her condition and became famous all across Europe as a result. Barbara Ursler, or Urselin, was born in or near Augsburg, Germany, apparently on the 18th of February 1629, to Belshazzar and Anne Ursler. She wasn't from a famous or wealthy family, and normally a girl of her background would have long since been forgotten by history. Yet in Barbara's case, we have records written by people who saw and even spoke with her, plus contemporary images of her with labels which contain biographical information. Thus, we are able to reconstruct the outlines of her life fairly well. The interest she sparked was due to the fact that from early childhood she exhibited excessive hair growth all over her body. Her condition is now known as either hypertrichosis, Ambras syndrome, or more colloquially as werewolf syndrome. It can be congenital or acquired, and in congenital cases it is caused by a faulty gene. Fewer than 100 instances of it have been documented across history, though the fact that I found 3 cases on YouTube with just a quick search, and they all related to people born roughly at the start of the 21st century, makes me think that there were likely more instances of it in the past, and either the person died young, possibly because they were rejected by their families, or managed to stay out of the spotlight. Acquired hypertrichosis seems to show up a little more often. There was an outbreak of cases amongst babies in Europe in 2024, for instance, which was traced back to the fact that their parents were using an anti-baldness medication, which was then somehow transferred to the child and caused them to suffer excessive hair growth. When the medication was discontinued, the children's unwanted hair growth ceased. It's tricky to say exactly what caused Barbara's case. It seems to have been congenital. However, as we'll see in a minute, it's possible that she met the English diarist Samuel Pepys, and that she said on that occasion that the hair only began to grow when she was 7. This might suggest an acquired case. However, she travelled widely during her life, and it's difficult to imagine what environmental factor or factors could have caused this condition, then continue to cause it even when she moved elsewhere. It may be that she was lying or genuinely mistaken, or that Pepys met a different woman. But if it was Barbara, then perhaps her hypertrichosis was congenital, but the hair just became much thicker and more obvious around the age of 7. I don't know. Any doctors who are listening and who can shed some light on this, your thoughts would be very welcome in the comments section below. There is still no cure, but nowadays laser treatments can help to reduce the symptoms, though they won't work on light hairs, only dark, and I've left a video about an Indian boy with the condition linked in the description box which will demonstrate this. There's also electrolysis, but both are expensive and take a considerable amount of time and numerous treatments. During Barbara's lifetime, of course, they weren't available. All she could do was shave the hair off if she wished. But even as a child, it was clear to her family that there was money to be made from her condition, and constantly removing the hair may not have been the best financial option. By the age of 8, Barbara was being put on display for fee-paying spectators, and she would continue to make a living in this way for the rest of her known life, travelling all over Europe in the process. She was in London in 1637, where she was seen by another English diarist, John Evelyn, more on him in a minute, Copenhagen in 1639, Paris in 1645, Rome in 1647, Milan in 1648, she was back in Augsburg in 1653, in Frankfurt in 1655, London again in 1657, where Evelyn saw her for the second time, Beauvais in 1660, and England for a third time in 1668. Clearly, she was a popular attraction. In the beginning, she was under the care of her parents and can have had little or no say in the matter. I also imagine they were keeping the money made from showing her off. By 1657, though, she had wed a Dutchman called Johann Michael van Beck and had a child. Over a century later, in 1769, the author James Granger would write that Van Beck married this frightful creature on purpose to carry her about for a show, but he cites no source for this take on the couple's relationship and reasons for marrying, and may have just been projecting his own biases onto Johann. That said, her husband did operate as her manager, and it is certainly possible that he was motivated by a business opportunity rather than love. In the 19th century, author Henry Wilson claimed that she had married in 1654, but again he gives no source and lists her name as Augustina Barbara, though elsewhere he calls her Barbara Urselin, and her age as 22, though she would have been 26 in that year. This is further proof of something I'm always saying, which is that it's best to stick to the primary sources to find the most reliable information, and that brings us to the diary of John Evelyn. Evelyn wrote an entry on the 15th of September 1657 in which he described seeing and speaking to Barbara, saying, "I also saw the hairy maid, or woman whom 20 years before I had also seen when a child. Her very eyebrows were combed upward, and all her forehead as thick and even as grows on any woman's head, neatly dressed. There come also 2 locks very long out of each ear. She had also a most prolix beard and mustachios, with long locks of hair growing on the very middle of her nose, exactly like an island dog. The rest of her body not so hairy, yet exceeding long in comparison, arms, neck, breast, and back, the colour of a bright brown, and fine as well-dressed flax. She was now married, and told me had 1 child that was not hairy, nor were any of her parents or relations. She was born at Augsburg in Germany, and for the rest, very well shaped, played well on the harpsichord." From this we can deduce that Barbara was well educated in both languages and music. Portraits from around this time also show her wearing fashionable clothing. The low-cut neckline was the style, it wasn't specifically to show off her body hair, and she was presumably making good money to support herself, her husband, and her child. This isn't the only first-hand account we have of her appearance, though. Over 11 years later, in 1668, she was back in England. We know this because a note written by a Mr. John Bullfinch underneath a print of one of her portraits, which eventually ended up in the possession of a bookseller in Bath, said that "this woman I saw in Ratcliffe Highway," which was a road between the city of London and the Docklands, "in the year 1668, and was satisfied she was a woman." We also have the diary entry I mentioned earlier from Samuel Pepys, which is dated the 21st of December that year. In it he wrote that he "went into Holborn, and there saw the woman that is to be seen with a beard. She is a little plain woman, a Dane, her name Ursula Dian, about 40 years old, her voice like a little girl's, with a beard as much as any man I ever saw, black almost and grizzly. They offered to show my wife further satisfaction if she desired it, refusing it to men that desired it there, but there is no doubt but by her voice she is a woman. It begun to grow at about 7 years old, and was shaved not above 7 months ago, and is now so big as any man's almost that I ever saw, I say bushy and thick. It was a strange sight to me, I confess, and what pleased me mightily." Now, there are a few problems with this account. The nationality, Danish instead of German, is wrong, as is the name, Ursula Dian instead of Barbara van Beck. Yet this name is close enough to Barbara's maiden name of Barbara Ursler or Urselin that it does seem to suggest that it was her, and that Pepys simply did a poor job of collecting her details. The age of about 40 is accurate. We know from Bullfinch's account that Barbara was in the country that year, and we need to bear in mind how few people had her condition. What are the chances that these 2 men saw a different foreign woman in and around London in the same year who was of about the correct age, suffered from hypertrichosis, and had a similar name to Barbara Urselin? Whether or not Pepys met the real Barbara continues to be debated, but I tend to think that he did. There is something very disturbing to modern eyes in Evelyn, Bullfinch, and Pepys's accounts that I'd like to draw your attention to. And that is Evelyn's knowledge of the hair on Barbara's breast and back, Bullfinch's comment that he, quote, "was satisfied she was a woman," and Pepys's that "they offered to show my wife further satisfaction if she desired it, refusing it to men that desired it there." While Evelyn may have just seen Barbara's chest and the top of her back thanks to the low cut of her dress, the other 2 comments more strongly suggest that she was expected to show off her private parts to some onlookers to prove she wasn't a man masquerading as a woman. This would be completely degrading then and now. We'll never know if she was a willing participant in that activity or if her husband pushed her into it, but it shows how difficult her life could be. Bullfinch's comment is the last confirmed sighting we have of her, and sadly we don't know what became of her after 1668, by which point she was approaching 50 years old. Possibly she retired into obscurity, but I think it's more likely that she died shortly after that date. So to sum up, was Barbara used and abused, or was she in control of her own destiny? It's hard to say. Certainly her parents will have controlled her as a child, and she had no say in the beginnings of her career as a spectacle to be viewed for money. Yet while I have to wonder if pressure was put on her to prove she was a woman to some spectators, there is nevertheless no direct evidence from her later life that she was being forced to perform and show herself against her will. And her job allowed her to travel the continent in an era when comparatively few people did, women even less so. She got to meet many interesting people, have a roof over her head, fine clothes on her back, and food in her stomach. It may have paid for her education, and it allowed her to care for her child, becoming a family business for her and her husband. We'll likely never know the true nature of their relationship, but they were obviously sleeping together, which suggests more than just a business partnership, and we can only hope that Johann was kind to her and made her happy. We would consider the way she made her money to be distasteful today, but in an era when there were relatively few career options open to women at the best of times, I think, assuming she was a willing participant in her displays, that she is to be commended for making the best of a bad situation and finding a way to provide for herself and see the world. It is also worth noting that she was not seen as some sort of monstrosity in her own time, even if later writers presented her as such. In 2017, the Wellcome Collection in London acquired a picture of her, and at that time their research development manager was quoted by the Guardian newspaper as saying, "She is not portrayed as a freak as the Victorians would have described her. As I often say when lecturing, you can blame the Victorians for most things, but as a woman with great self-possession and presence, painted at a time when she would have been viewed, as Evelyn saw her, as wonderful, a natural wonder." Perhaps someday some long-lost death record will show up in an archive somewhere, and we'll discover what happened to this incredible woman. Before I go, please remember to give this video a thumbs up, as that lets YouTube know you approve and helps to get it in front of other people who might like it. If you haven't already done so, you might want to click the subscribe button and switch on the notification bell too, so that you get a little ding each time I release a video. And for more from me, you can join my YouTube membership by clicking the join button underneath videos and following the on-screen instructions. I've also published a book entitled Find Your Irish Ancestors online, available from Amazon, and I have a Patreon site where I share bonus material. The links for these things, plus my other socials, are below, as is a link to my website, historycallingofficial.com, where you can sign up to my mailing list and get 2 free downloads. Finally, a big thank you as always to those of you who donate to the channel using the thanks button underneath videos for your very kind generosity. Let me know in the comments if you think Barbara was a willing participant in her displays or being used by those around her. And if you'd like to learn more about unusual history or the history of medicine, try one of these options next. I'll be back next time, and until then, keep learning.